Om Sadashivasamarambham Shankaracharya madhyamam Asmadacharya paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Parabrahmanishtham Swato Dharmanishtham Ahimsaikanishtham Swasishyai Sujushtham Yatinam Varishtham Gurunam Garishtham Dayananda Rupam Madacharya Mide. Thank you all for joining us here today. It is somewhat emotional for me to talk, because the first time I got darshan of Swami Viditatmanandaji was roughly 30 years ago, 96, 97 time frame. And I was attending a camp at Sailorsburg in the US ashram of Arshavidya Gurukulam. And during lunchtime, when Swamiji was having Bhiksha, I mustered the courage. I was new to the ashram, I was new to Vedanta, I was new to every concept, Purushartha, everything was new to me. And so I mustered the courage to approach Swamiji and I introduced myself. Then he listened to me and said, "Oh, Vedanta should be easy for you." I said, so this was refreshing, because Vedanta was new to me and a lot of self-doubt is there. Am I in the right place? What is Swamiji going to talk about? What is the topic? I ended up in an ashram. Vedanta is new. Somebody told me I should go to the ashram, so I ended up here. So all these doubts are all going on in the head. Suddenly I hear these words. So those words were like a breath of fresh air for me. It was a validation. I still remember that. So, and then after that, I used to be listening to Swamiji's talks of various granthas. And then some years ago, about 5 years ago, I called the ashram here, which is the Adhyatma Vidya Mandir, Tattvatirtha. And I asked I called the bookstore and I requested him to send me all of Pujya Swamiji's books. Then he said, "Tell me which books you want." Then I said again the same thing. "Send me all books of Swamiji that are in English." Then he said, "Oh, okay, I got it." And then then after that, of course, I was used to Swamiji's writing and talks, and so I enjoyed many of the books. I will admit I have not read all the books because there are many books. Satsangs, 2 books are there, 3 books are there. Satsangs with Swami Viditatmananda. So I enjoyed that. And then recently, last year, all of us studied Kaivalya Upanishad, and I relied on Swamiji's book on Kaivalya Upanishad. And so I have such good memories all these years. And Swamiji, if we were to turn back the clock, Purvashrama, Swamiji is from a place called Kambat. And Kambat happens to be the anglicized version of Kambat is Cambay. And in school I used to read about Gulf of Cambay and so forth. All of you will know that. And so that Cambay is Kambat, which is in this a district called Anand in Gujarat. Many of you like me know Amul. Amul is Anand Milk Union Limited. So that's those days. I remember that company. It's the I think largest largest farmers milk cooperative in India. And so this Kambat also is in that same place. Amul is in Anand, of course, Anand city in Anand district. So, and Swamiji is coming from a big family. He has 8 siblings were there in his family. It's a large family. And then he went on to become an engineer. and then worked in Vadodara, Baroda that is, and there also he got exposed to Vedanta. He used to attend Vedanta talks by various Swamis, and then he went to US to get his master's in mechanical engineering, North Dakota State University. And then after that he got a job in New York and worked there for some time. And then the calling was to come to Chinmaya Mission Sandipani, and that's where Swamiji attended his 3-year course. We often talk about 3-year course, and so that 76, 77, 78, that 3.5 years there at that time, headed by Swami Chinmayanandaji and Swami Dayanandaji. And that was the first batch, literally the first 3-year batch. Anywhere you hear of 3-year course, that was the first course, and Sandipani course. And Swami Paramarthanandaji, I think if I am not mistaken, and then Brahmavidanandaji, Brahmatmanandaji, and then Acharya ji, etc. I think they were all in the same class. And then after that, after a year or two, Swamiji ended up teaching when Chinmayanandaji and Dayanandaji were traveling, and Swami Viditatmanandaji took the next 3-year course, of course with the guidance of Swamiji, no doubt, but 3-year course teaching. Just to put things in context, we are all attending online classes. Online. 1 class a day, 2 classes, 3 classes, 4 classes a week, whatever. Then we attend a camp, 3-day camp in the ashram. Then we attend a 1-week camp, 1-month camp. Then 3-month camp. Imagine what commitment is required to attend a 3-month camp in the ashram, giving up all our draṣṭā comforts. Then somebody ends up attending a 3-year course. Then somebody is teaching the 3-year course. I want you to see the level of commitment and that draṣṭā nishtha that is required for all these things. And so right then, so that must have been 1981, means 20 plus 45 years ago we are talking, 46 years ago. So we are so blessed to have Swamiji here, such a Mahatma. And then of course he was teaching, and then there was the ashram in the US was established around 85, 90 onwards, and so he started visiting the ashram. He was required there and he was teaching there, and then he used to stay there for 4, 5, 6 months those days, I think. And then until now, even until last year, Swamiji has been spending 4 months of the year in the US ashram, conducting camps there. And so there is, of course, you can see we are all studying Bhagavad Gita, Upanishads, we are studying Shankara Bhaashanam, we are studying Prakarana Granthas, Brahma Sutram, Bhashyam, and so forth. And it's all coming from Dayanandaji through Viditatmanandaji, we are all getting it. And so we are so happy, Swamiji, that you could take some time out of your busy schedule to be with us today. Friends, please join me in doing Manasika Namaskara to Swamiji. Swamiji, over to you.
Om Sahanavatu Sahanau Bhunatu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. I've been asked to talk about Bhagavan Adi Shankaracharya. Shankaracharya Jayanti, which we celebrate in the month of Vaishakha, the Panchami, just went a few days ago. In that context, I think this talk and perhaps others are also organized. The great reverence and devotion invoked in me was from our Puja Swamiji, my Guruji, Swami Dayanandaji. As we were just told, the 3-year course or 2.5-year course, a full-time residential course in Sandipani Sadhanalaya, Powai, Bombay. Where we studied various texts, including the Bhashya of Bhagavan Adi Shankaracharya. And here I remember a Puja Swamiji talking about or mentioning even Shankaracharya ji. I could see that devotion, that reverence for Adi Shankaracharya ji. And that is where I got my reverence and devotion for Shankaracharya ji from Puja Swamiji. Well, talking about Shankaracharya ji, and we were studying Shankara Bhashya of various Upanishads, etc. Therefore, Shankaracharya ji was a very common topic. I could see how our Puja Swamiji felt inspired, felt motivated, and that devotion that Puja Swami had for Shankaracharya is the source of my devotion for Shankaracharya. In many ways, a disciple imitates the Guru. I did not quite imitate the style of Puja Swamiji, but the teaching of Puja Swamiji. Because my attention was always on the teacher that Puja Swamiji was. It is somewhat sad that in those days I did not pay almost any attention to the person that Puja Swamiji was. I just knew the teacher that Puja Swamiji was. It is later that I came to know the person that Puja Swamiji was. And from various people who I found were so devoted to Puja Swamiji. I loved Puja Swamiji for his knowledge. But as I came to know the person that Puja Swamiji was, the loving and compassionate person, the father figure or even the mother figure for many people, so generous, so loving, that is how I developed the reverence for the person that Puja Swamiji was. The teacher that Puja Swamiji was, but I missed out the person. And through other people, I learned the person that Puja Swamiji was. So as I said, I inherited the love, the devotion, the reverence of Bhagavan Adi Shankaracharya from Puja Swamiji. The verse that Acharya just chanted Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmad Acharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Vande Guru Paramparam. We salute the parampara, the krama, the sequence of the Guru. Shankaracharya says in one place that even a scholar who is asampradayavit, sampradayavit means one who has studied the Shastras, Vedanta from a teacher, who himself studied from his teacher, and thus the knowledge is coming down through the lineage or sequence of Gurus. Therefore, the knowledge that you receive from your Guru is not something original to the Guru. Sadashiva Samarambham. This parampara, this lineage started from Bhagavan Shivji as Dakshinamurti. Lord Shiva got incarnated as Dakshinamurti in the form of a teacher. And it is said that same Bhagavan Dakshinamurti incarnated as Bhagavan Shankaracharya. One was seated under the tree and received the jignasus, the seekers, the mumukshus, such as Sanaka Sanandana. But when same Dakshinamurti Bhagavan incarnated as Shankaracharya, he realized that sitting under the tree won't suffice. Muktvā maunam vatavitapyano mūlato nishpatanti Shambhor murti sharati bhuvane Shankaracharya rupa. Muktvā maunam vatavitapyano mūlataha nishpatanti. As Bhagavan Dakshinamurti, it is said that he imparted knowledge in silence. Well, our Puja Swami said that he certainly must have imparted in words, but the tradition says that the Guru imparted the knowledge in silence and Shishyas received it. Chitram vadataro mule vruddha shishya gururyava gurostamo vyakhyanam Shishyasu chinna samshayaha. Chitram, there is this great wonder under the banyan tree. Vruddha shishyaha gururyava. With the Guru, the teacher is yuva, is young. In this case, the teacher was young even in age. Vedantic teacher is always young as far as the knowledge and freshness and the nutya navinata is concerned. But here, this teacher, the Dakshinamurti, was young in both ways. Chitram vatataror mule vruddha shishya guru yuva. It's a great wonder under the banyan tree that the teacher is young and the disciples are vruddha, they are old. He said that they may not be old in age, but they are old in terms of the ignorance and identification with the upadhi, and therefore he is coming down from the time beginningless. In that sense, they may be old. Gurostamo vyakhyanam shishyastu chinna samshayaha. It is said that under that banyan tree, the Guru the Lord Shiva, Lord Dakshinamurti, imparted knowledge in silence, the disciples such as Sanaka Sanandana were highest of the highest level, and therefore they received that knowledge. Muktvā maunam vatapita vino mūlato nispatanti. But when that Lord Dakshinamurti incarnated as Lord Shiva, or Lord Bhagavan Shankaracharya, he realized that in this day, in that generation, the silent sermon will not work. Also, sitting under a tree and expecting the disciples to come to you also may not work. Our Pujya Taponji Maharaj he compared the teacher with a well. He said to his disciple Swami Chinmayanandaji, he says, those who want knowledge should come to you. Because he thought that the teacher is like a well, and the disciples are thirsty, and the thirsty person comes to well and draws water and quenches his thirst. But for Swami Chinmayanandaji, rather, this was in Uttarakashi, looking at the Ganges, flowing and bringing water all the way from Gangotri to where we are. He said, Guru should not be like a well. These days, a Guru should be like a river. But the river originates from hundreds of miles and reaches out to those people who are thirsty. So, muktvā maunam. As Dakshinamurti, Lord Shiva was like a well, where the Sanaka Sanandana and the disciples approached him. But as Shankaracharya, he realized that would not work. So, muktvā maunam vatavitapyano mūlato nispadanti. Vatavitapyano mūlam. The sitting under the tree, the banyan tree, and teaching silently, the same Lord Shiva as Bhagavan Adi Shankaracharya. Muktvā maunam, he gave up his silence, realizing that the people at this time will not understand the language of silence. Also, perhaps it may not occur to them to go to the teacher because they may not know that they need this knowledge. Therefore, it is first necessary to let people recognize they need this knowledge, that there is ignorance in life. And this was brought up brilliantly by Adi Shankaracharya in the Brahma Sutra Bhashya, where as preface, Shankaracharya talks about a phenomenon called adhyasa. Adhyasa means superimposition. Seeing one thing as different or contrary to what it is. Our familiar example is the rope snake. Perceiving a snake where in fact there is a rope. Although Shankaracharya always preferred the draṣṭā example of Shuktika Rajatam. He did not mention much the rope snake. He preferred to mention the shell. Sometimes while taking a walk on the seashore, you see a piece of silver lying in the sand. You bend down and pick up that thing and realize that it is just a simple shell. Because the particles of sand are stuck to the shell and the rays of sun it reflects and shines like silver. So this is a typical example what is called adhyasa, superimposition. of seeing silver when in fact there is a shell. This is the example of adhyasa that Bhagavan Adi Shankaracharya preferred. He doesn't mention much rope snake. Somewhere he does when he mentions many examples. Anyway, that is primarily he mentions the example of the shell and silver, where shell is without any value and silver has a lot of value. You are not really attracted to that. Well, that example is used by the teachers, Acharyas, for illustrating many things. But primarily it is an example of what is called adhyasa, superimposition. This phenomenon is called superimposing silver upon the shell. That there is a superimposition. This is called adhyasa in technical words. So Bhashyakara Adi Shankaracharya begins his Bhashya on Brahma Sutra with describing this phenomenon called adhyasa or superimposition, drawing our attention to the fact that there occurs an adhyasa in the life of every human being. Other living beings are not capable of thinking, therefore they may not, but we are all born with this Brahma or delusion called adhyasa, seeing one thing as contrary to what it is. Bhashyakara points out that this adhyasa begins with our own self. We entertain an adhyasa, superimposition born of ignorance. The reason why Bhashyakara or Shankaracharya introduces the concept of adhyasa in Brahma Sutra is to establish the fact that there is ignorance in the human life, that we are born ignorant. How do you say there is ignorance in our life? Because there is adhyasa in our life. What makes you say there is adhyasa or superimposition in our life? Because each one of us thinks that we are a limited, helpless, hapless creature. Each one of us thinks that I am a limited being. I see myself as a limited, needy being. This need is a product of adhyasa or ignorance, and that basic need creates desire, and desires creates action, etc. Avidya, kama, karma. This is how Bhashyakara or Shankaracharya explains the sequence. Avidya, kama, karma. Avidya is ignorance. And explained in texts like Viveka Chudamani, etc. This ignorance has two aspects called avarana and vikshepa. Avarana is veiling. Vikshepa is superimposition. For example, the famous example of the shell and silver, avaranam is not to know that object as shell, and vikshepa is to have the notion that it is silver. See, there are two aspects, avarana and vikshepa. This is how Bhagavan Shankaracharya explains in his text, Viveka and other texts also. So that there is this ignorance in the human life. That's what Bhashyakara first establishes before writing Bhashya on Brahma Sutra. that why is Brahma Sutra necessary anyway? Brahma Sutra imparts the knowledge of Brahman, which is the self. It imparts the knowledge of the self, true nature of the self. What do you mean I need to know myself? I know who I am. So first to establish that, I think that I know myself, but in fact I entertain many, what is called delusion. Our Puja Swami did not like this word. But we have this adhyasa, he didn't like superimposition also, but any adhyasa. Just to use the word superimposition about our own self. Because then alone the knowledge has a role in our life. When there is ignorance. Ignorance about my own self. And ignorance having these two aspects. Not knowing the true nature of myself and taking myself to be contrary to what I really am. As the Upanishad teaches us, Tattvamasi. Tat means Brahma, Brahman. Brahman means the limitless. That's what every teacher will, Puja Swami was explaining to us. The meaning of the word Brahman comes from Bruh Dhatu. Tattvamasi, you are limitless. This is a basic teaching of the Upanishads. And that is only teaching. In fact, this one sentence, Tattvamasi, you are limitless, or you are Brahman, is essence of the teaching of Vedanta. And whole Upanishad, such as Chandogya Upanishad, the 6th chapter, which mentions this Mahavakya, Tattvamasi, as many as 9 times. The purpose is to help us recognize our true nature. Because we are ignorant of our own self and we entertain many false notions about ourselves. That's called adhyasa. So you can see the brilliance of Adi Shankaracharya. That he first made us understand that there is ignorance in our life. What is the role of knowledge? Knowledge to dispel ignorance. Where is ignorance? In me. About whom? About myself. And as I said, this ignorance has 2 aspects, avarana and vikshepa. Not knowing the true nature of myself and not knowing that I am limitless and taking myself to be contrary to what I am, meaning that taking myself to be a limited being. This is called dhyasa. And this is a basic problem, basic reason for all sorrow in our life. Really, there is no reason to any sorrow in our life. Pain can be there. Pain is a reality of life, pleasure and pain. But we need not equate pain with sorrow, understand? Sorrow is a reaction to pain. Because we resist pain. We don't accept pain. And that is how sorrow is created. So sorrow is the fundamental problem or shoka. Therefore, again, Bhagavan Adi Shankaracharya introduces the Bhashya of Bhagavad Gita by explaining to us the fundamental problem in human life, shoka and moha is a fundamental problem. Shoka is grief and moha is false notions. Why should someone like Arjuna have a grief in his life? Why should he have a sorrow? He was a highly accomplished person, highly regarded by everybody. And someone like Arjuna has sorrow. And that is not the sorrow confined to Arjuna. As our Puja Swami explained, the problem is at two levels. The fundamental problem and the topical problem. The fundamental problem that is common to all the human beings, including Arjuna. And topical problem is the fundamental problem manifesting as a topical situation. As in case of Arjuna, he came with all the enthusiasm to fight this battle. He was very confident. The Lord Krishna, please lead my chariot to the middle of the two armies so I can see both of them. Kairmaya sayoddhavyam asmin samuddhame. I want to see who are the people who has come to fight with me. Arjuna, who had this kind of an enthusiasm, who was ready to fight the battle, all of a sudden says to Lord Krishna, Nayotse, O Lord, I will not fight. Thus, Arjuna's perception of himself changed. Well, we cannot go into great detail, but you must understand what is the cause of sorrow of Arjuna is the cause of sorrow of every human being. Is the false perception of the self. What is it? What was perception of Arjuna? Arjuna saw himself Arjuna. What's wrong with that, Swamiji? He was Arjuna. He had all these uncles and, his cousins and grandfather and teachers and so many, all of them in both the armies. Tatra pashyat chitan partha pitrun atha pitamahan Acharyan matulan dhratrun putran saukhyan sakim statha. He saw there his friends, his gurus, his grandfather, his relatives. So Swamiji, what's wrong in that? They were his friends and relatives, were they not? What's wrong in Arjuna's perception in seeing these people as he saw? Answer is no. His perception was wrong. They were not his relatives, not his friends, they were not his uncles, they were his enemies. In the battlefield, there are no uncles, there are no friends. In the battlefield, there are only enemies. Arjuna was clear. When he entered the battlefield, he was clear. Kairmaya sayoddhavyam asmin samuddhime yotsimānāna vekṣayam. He knew this dushti buddhi Arjuna Duryodhana and all the people who come to help him, I want to see them. Until that point, he was very clear. When he saw the actual, something happened to him. And my personal feeling is that was caused by Lord Krishna. This I am just sharing with you, don't say this to anybody. But I think that the sudden change in the mindset of Arjuna was caused by Lord Krishna. And then of course we are all similar to Arjuna. What cause? There is no cause of ignorance. And so there is no cause for Arjuna's ignorance also, but some cause has to be shown. That he saw his near and dear ones in both the armies. And he realized that at the end of this battle all of them will die. And the prospect of the death or losing this near and dear ones made him extremely sad. But this was a false perception, a dhyasa. Why, Swami? They were his relatives, they were the near and dear ones. No. In the battlefield, they are only friends and enemies. What is in the opposite side? All enemies. All who are here are friends. And he was clear about this perception until he came to the battlefield. All of a sudden his perception changed when he saw the people. And he said, how can I kill? Svajanam hikatam hatva sukirasya madhava. Hey Madhava, how can I be happy killing my near and dear ones? To see the enemies as near and dear ones is the case of adhyasa, understand? So thus we illustrated Arjuna, the famous example. Each one of us is born with adhyasa, with the ignorance of the true nature of the self, and with all the false notions about ourselves. Because the Sākṣī Upanishad says, you are Brahman, you are limitless, and I look upon myself as a limited being. And of course, Vedanta explains why. Why do I feel limited? Because of identification with my body, etc., which are limited. So if you understand the problem, then we can understand the solution also. But this phenomenon of adhyasa is what Bhashyakara talks about as an introduction to Brahma Sutra. Adhyasa means superimposition. Seeing something, seeing the self as quite contrary to what I am. And adhyasa is always a product of ignorance. Thus Bhashyakara establishes that there is ignorance in our life. Understand this. Ignorance of the self. Maybe ignorance of many things, maybe ignorance of French language. That ignorance is topical ignorance. We're talking of this phenomenal spiritual ignorance. Ignorance of my true nature of myself. And also having false notions about myself. This is a phenomenon called adhyasa. And Bhashyakara begins the Bhashya commentary on Brahma Sutra by first establishing that there is adhyasa or superimposition in the human life. When there is adhyasa, which is a product of ignorance, it establishes that there is ignorance in our life. Ignorance can only be dispelled by knowledge. Therefore, first, he makes the case for knowledge. Why should I study Brahma Sutra? For knowledge of Brahman. Why should I know Brahman? Because Brahman is to be known as myself, and that ignorance is causing all sorrow in my life. Vedanta explains that there is no cause of sorrow in our life other than that ignorance and the false notions about myself which are caused by ignorance. First of all, I do not know the true nature of myself, that I am limitless, and on the top of that, I take myself to be a limited, helpless being. It is this false perception of myself which is the cause of all the sorrow in our life. As long as this problem of false perception of adhyasa is not addressed, regardless of what we do in our life, we may acquire health and wealth and fame and name and whatever, even swarga. Nothing is capable of removing ignorance. Only knowledge can remove ignorance. That's how the case is made of knowledge. Knowledge of Brahman, and therefore the study of Brahma Sutra, which imparts to us the knowledge of Brahman. That's how Bhagavan Shankaracharya, a brilliant teacher, brilliant in every way, he mentioned only one and the most important aspect of Adi Shankaracharya, but he was a man of many, many facets. He was a great organizer, a great visionary. He could see a problem coming for the future generations, and therefore he set up these 4 mathas in 4 directions or corners of Hindustan, India, established principal disciples at the head of those maths to initiate and maintain a Guru Parampara so that this knowledge will be available to the future generations. Because he knew, as Lord Krishna says that, hey Arjuna, in the beginning of 4th chapter, that this tradition was interrupted, broken in between. And that's the reason why I am telling you, Arjuna, today, to reconnect that tradition, without which there is no relief or no happiness in our life. As I said, the main cause of unhappiness, sadness is ignorance, and therefore the primary solution is the true nature of ourselves. The Bhagavad Gita teaches this in 2 steps. Lord Krishna realizes that we cannot right away grasp the teaching that you are Brahman. I am entertaining so many complexes about myself. I have such a low self-esteem that if I am told that you are Brahman, I cannot accept it. Therefore, first of all, my mind should be prepared to recognize this possibility that yes, I can be Brahman. That requires a certain kind of mind which is called Shuddhantahkaranam, or the pure mind, the purity of mind, the Antahkarana Shuddhi, for which Lord Krishna teaches Karma Yoga. And once we have that Shuddhantahkarana, we are ready for knowledge, then Lord Krishna teaches Jnana Yoga. Lokesmin dvidhanishta prāprokta mayanagha jnana yogena sankhyanam karma yogena yoginam. I am mentioning these verses because we cannot separate these things from Shankaracharya. That is why Shankaracharya is well established in our mind, and so also his teaching. So Jayakumarji, I think I can perhaps take a break here and maybe invite the listeners. Would you like? What would you like? Question answers?
Namaste, Swami. Yes, definitely Here one thing was that muktvā maunam. When you mentioned about Shankara said, it was very interesting that Shankara decided, no, I can't sit under a tree and teach and all that. It's not, that is a different time and this is a different time. That shloka, if you can repeat that once for us, Swamiji.
So, Lord Shiva as Shankaracharya recognized that sitting under the tree as Dakshinamurti and giving sermon in silence will not work. Ajnanantar ghanapatitan atmavidyopade tratum lokan bhavadashikha tapa papachamanan. See, people were suffering. They are burned by the flames of ignorance. And they were trapped in the forest of ignorance and being inflicted by these flames. Seeing that there was no way out of this other than Atvidyopadesha, the Upadesha, the teaching of the self-knowledge. Therefore, Lord Shiva, muktvā maunam vatavitepino mulato, as Lord Dakshinamurti, Lord Shiva was seated under the banyan tree. And the mumukshus came to him. And he gave them the silent sermon. The mumukshus were of highest qualification. But now he said that won't work. As our Puja Swami and his Guru Tapovan Maharaj, I give you the example of a well and the river. Swami Tapovan Maharaj said, Chinmaya, whoever wants knowledge should come to you. Just as a thirsty person goes to the well, so whoever wants knowledge will come to you. But Swami Chinmayanandaji saw, because their ashram was in Uttarakashi on the bank of the river Ganges. Recording has stopped. So, I was saying that how Lord Shiva first incarnated as Lord Dakshinamurti, seated under the banyan tree, giving the sermon in silence. Chitram vatataror mule vruddha shishya gurur yuva gurustu maunam vyakhyanam shishyastu chinda samshayaha. This is great wonder under the banyan tree, where the Guru is young and the disciples are aged. Aged only in terms of ignorance. Gurustu maunam vyakhyanam. The Guru is imparting knowledge in silence. And the disciples were able to receive. That was then. This was when Lord Shiva was incarnated as Dakshinamurti. But when he was incarnated as Shankaracharya, he realized that won't work. Muktvā maunam. Therefore he gave up his silence. Vatavitepyano mulato nispatanti. He set out from the root of the banyan tree. Shambhor murtis charati bhuvane Shankaracharya rupa. This Shambho murti, this embodiment of Shambhu, Lord Shiva, is now constantly traveling in India, in the world, for imparting knowledge, recognizing that. So from Dakshinamurti, teaching in silence, he becomes Shankaracharya, who is very talkative. Many spoke a lot in just the short lifespan of 32 years. What all he has taught. The famous texts are called Bhashya, or the commentaries on Prasthanatraya. These three pillars of the edifice of Vedanta. the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita and Brahma Sutra. Upanishad is the Shruti, Bhagavad Gita is called the Smriti, and the Brahma Sutra is called the Nyaya or Yukti. So this is how these three full texts are there, and Bhagavan Shankaracharya has written Bhashya on all of them. That's how he opened the key. There is a verse which says that the jeweler displayed his very expensive, necklace in his showroom, but there was nobody having the money, and therefore nobody was there to buy. And then came Shankaracharya, who gave them, see, money here is the artha. The word artha has two meanings. Artha means money. Because of lack of artha or the money, the people could not buy that beautiful necklace. When artha was provided to them, here the meaning was provided to them of this Brahma Sutra and Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita, then people were able to, enjoy that the wealth, artha. So they did not have the artha or the wealth to buy that expensive necklace. They were given artha or the meaning to be able to understand that necklace in the form of this prasthanatrayi, the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita and the Brahma Sutra. So Bhashyakara gave the artha, and that's how people were able to. And so the scholars were able to buy that garland, the necklace, and that's how this knowledge was propagated. Yes. Okay. So now anybody has any question?
Is there any difference between draṣṭā and sākṣī?
Is there a difference between draṣṭā and sākṣī? Well, you can create a difference from the meaning of the words. Draṣṭā means the seer. Literally, sākṣī means witness. But draṣṭā has the tuch pratyaya, which means that one who is the agent of draṣṭī or seeing. Draṣṭā, drush plus tuch pratyaya makes it draṣṭā. Means that he is a seer, so he has the doership. Draṣṭā literally means the doer of draṣṭī or seeing, and sākṣī means witness. In that sense, sākṣī is a better word, witness, because witness is uninvolved. Although draṣṭā also means the same when explained, but the two words have different literal meanings. Draṣṭā means the seer, witness means the sākṣī means witness. So witness is uninvolved. The draṣṭā, the one who is seeing, may be affected by what he sees. A witness supposedly is unaffected. But they can mean the same thing. As long as the one who uses the words explains the meaning in which they are used, so long both the words can convey a similar meaning.
So we heard that the draṣṭā is you can create two different literal meanings. Draṣṭā can be affected by the drishya, the one that he sees, and so that possibility is there. So literal meanings are different is what we heard Swamiji.
So draṣṭā is the agent of drishti or seeing, and witness, sākṣī is just the witness. So draṣṭā has literally agency, and therefore a draṣṭā can be affected by a drishya, where sākṣī does not have agency or kartrutva, therefore he would not be affected by what he sees. However, both the words are used and they can be used to convey the same meaning as long as the one who uses the words explains that to us. So go ahead, what is your question? Okay.
Swamiji, I entered in this Vedanta field last 2 years from Yoga Marga to this Gyan Marga. So I want to understand the core of Vedanta, how to enter, because in Yoga Marga we always depend upon Vritti and Vritti Nirodha. So whatever I understood that first is the Dvaita Vritti, then Bhagavatakar Vritti. So this is the way. Is it correct to go in the Vedanta for a person who belongs from the background is yoga?
Yoga provides you a good preparation for Vedanta. Meaning that if you simply explain yoga as the control over the mind, the ability to control the mind, meaning that making the mind free from its extrovertedness, from distractions, and making the mind steady, that is enough. Then that mind is ready to listen to what the teacher is explaining and understand. So yoga means chitta vritti nirodha. That much advancement need not be there. But yoga means the focus of the mind, concentration of the mind, so that your mind is focused on the shravanam, what the teacher is teaching you, and that the aspect of yoga that is required for understanding Vedanta is the ability to focus the mind, make the mind free from distractions. Usually the mind has fascination for the pleasure of the world, and therefore mind generally is directed where it gets some enjoyment or pleasure. So far the mind is accustomed to enjoying pleasure of the objects of the world. So Vedanta first explains to us that pleasure coming from the objects is just a delusion, is Brahma or delusion, that objects do not give us pleasure. The only place where happiness is in yourself. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namah. Hari Om.